Welcome to an all-new Restoration Today podcast brought to you by DOT. Replace heavy jugs plus get better mold cleaning power with less odor and less product. DOT Cleaner features dilute oxidation technology powered by DOT's patented NT7 molecule. Get a free sample of DOT Mold Stain Cleaner and 20% off your first order at dotcleaner.com. A little does a lot. Hey there, thanks for checking out this bonus quick episode of the Restoration Today podcast. I am here talking with Leighton Healy from Know How, and we are catching up on how the workforce survey is going. And the Restoration Workforce Survey is going. So CNR has had the privilege of being a media partner on it, and there are some other great partners in the industry who've been helping push this forward since the beginning of 2022. And we're getting near the end of when people can complete the survey, but there's still time to get people in there. And so I wanted to bring Leighton in to talk a little bit about what he's seeing from the survey so far and what could really help get the best possible results at an end of this when it wraps up. So Leighton, thank you very much for joining me. So start by just sharing a quick kind of background of the survey for people who maybe aren't familiar with what this is.
Absolutely, Michelle. Yeah, thanks for having me here. The Workforce Survey, specifically the Restoration Workforce Survey, is the largest survey ever conducted in the restoration industry in North America on the workforce, to really understand what are some of the opportunities to really combat workforce challenges. So the biggest threat today that restoration companies are facing are workforce challenges, right? The ability to attract, retain, internally promote, and really engage with today's workforce. And so we've conducted, with the help of partners like yourself, an enormous surveying, and it's coming to a close. And so today is kind of that last push for your listeners to participate. And the results are piling in, and they're striking.
Okay. So what are, we don't want to give away a ton yet, and people be sure to pick up the March-April issue of CNR because it's going to have a lot of the results, and you're going to be able to see what came out of this survey, which I think is going to be massive and vital to the industry moving forward and getting future workforce here and retaining the talent that we have. But can you give us a little preview of some of the things or surprising data that you're seeing so far?
Absolutely. So one thing that I can absolutely share is that the workforce survey, the data, right? You can't argue with this data. The data is uncovering a massive chasm between how managers view work and some of the challenges in the workforce and how frontline workers view work and the challenges in the workforce. And I can give 4 specific examples that we can talk about where there's significant polarity. And unless we're able to create some common ground within our companies, we're going to just have this conveyor belt of staff coming in one door and out the other door.
Do you have those 4 components that you're willing to share now, or do people need to read the article and look at the research later to find those out?
You know what? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So one of the very first things is just simply why do people quit? Why do people quit? So we surveyed hundreds of individuals in the workforce, and it's interesting. So when we look at the data set that's representative of what we would call kind of management, right? And so these would be individuals who have people that report to them. And when you ask them anonymously, privately, right, why do good people quit in your organization, right? We're not talking about regrettable turnover, right? Like, I shouldn't have hired that person, right? I'm talking about good people. What they say is they tend to respond. There's a lot of themes, and they'll tend to say, good people don't quit. Or they'll blame the worker, right? Well, lack of discipline, or they just can't handle the heat of the industry, Now, part of that is that I think it's fair to say that in this industry, most management are people that were internally promoted, meaning they rose in the ranks, and sometimes it's the survival of the fittest. It's a very intense industry. And so there's a little bit of that kind of, strong person, sometimes you'd hear a person say like old man strength, kind of type perspective. And the reality is that that's just not working anymore because the upcoming generations, right, Gen Z, the millennials, right, who are going to be dominating the workforce, that's not how they think, right? So again, the management, what we see themes like, why do great people in your company quit? And we're not talking about just outliers. We're talking about a general theme is management say they're not organized, laziness, just a lack of discipline overall. They just can't follow my directions. They can't do simple tasks, or, they just can't track with my communication. Now, when you look at the worker cohort, again, hundreds of respondents across North America. We're not just picking on anyone, right?
Yep.
Why do people quit? Again, big themes. We're talking big, powerful themes that rise to the surface, right? My manager's attitude is hard to deal with, right? Upper management is very, very prickly, right? You know, a lot of knee-jerk reaction-based management style, right? You know, a lot of reactive, you know, very, you know, repercussion-based approaches to things, right?
Yep.
And you know, lack of training, you know, just a general, you know, a very big theme around toxic environment or favoritism, right? Just showing favoritism.
Yep.
And so again, you know, we're not here to try to, you know, pick a side. What we're saying is that, you know, in the courtroom, where the goal is, let's create a great place to work where people want to stay, where we can serve our client and really enjoy this work experience. If they say that's the outcome, well, on one side, you have a party who's just heels dug in, who are saying it's because they're lazy, it's because they can't follow instruction, and on the other side, they're saying they can be really nasty and they're super prickly. And actually, they're not very good at communicating. When they do communicate, they tend to go off and just kind of have a tantrum. And you know, and so there's a chasm there. So that's one example. You know, we can look at several others.
Okay. All right. So, do you want to look at several others? I have other questions, but I don't want to like cut you off with the data you want to share because it is really interesting. So keep going.
Yeah. So let's look at a couple others, right? So, I mean, another one is a very good question. I would say almost one of the most important questions that you can ask a worker. It's kind of, if you're familiar with like the Net Promoter Score, is would you recommend your current job to a friend, right? And one of the things that we're seeing that's very interesting is that there's stark contrast in demographics, specifically in generations. Okay, so it's interesting.
Yep.
So why that's important is that right now, the lowest likelihood category of generational categories to recommend their current job to a friend are Gen Zs, right? Significantly less likely to recommend their job to a friend or family compared to Gen Xers, right? Or even what we call upper level millennials, right? So millennials who are kind of, you know, right on the cusp of entering their 40s,
yep.
right? And so what you're seeing there is you're seeing the largest surplus, the largest influx of workers are of a generation who are increasingly saying, I would not recommend this job to my friends, right? And that's really important. Whereas you're seeing people who are moving into probably upper management in their career, a higher likelihood to say, yeah, I would recommend this career. And so again, we could really dig into that to say, what does that mean? But at the end of the day, the data is what the data is, and it's really interesting. And then I think probably the last thing I'd share is, we saw a lot of information around what do workers really find fulfilling at work. And I think that what's really interesting for us, Michelle, is that there's a real beam of hope. There's an opportunity for common ground. You know, there's an opportunity for management to kind of recast a shared vision, because really, unlike office staff, right, because we segmented by role and demographic, but unlike office staff, field techs and management share a common bond, which is what do they find most fulfilling in the aspects of their jobs?
Okay.
And so, you know, in terms of graphing it out by generation, by demographics, by role, you know, we're going to release a lot of data. But I'll tell you, one of the things that is a person, you know, who listened to my last comments, they would say, well, like, what's the option here? Like, what's the hope here? Interestingly, is that management and field staff, right? You know, where there's the greatest chasm in so many areas, they also have this really interesting place of common ground, which is that when you ask them, when you have a great day, what happened? And oftentimes they'll respond with the same thing. And it's different from office staff. It's different from what the sales team see. It's different from what the owners say. But for some reason, management and field staff are motivated by a lot of the same things. And so that's really interesting.
Okay, I cannot wait to hear what that motivator is and how it fits into the restoration industry. I'm going to leave that one for the article because that's a good teaser right there. So, okay. So I know that there's a little bit of time left to take the survey, and you guys have made it worthwhile for people to take the survey, right? Like you've had some amazing prizes and stuff out there. Is there any of that left? Is that gone? What does that whole thing look like? What do people get out of taking the survey?
Yeah, so I would say what they get is they get a chance to win power tools, sports gear, like cool video games, So I mean, there's some fun stuff, and we're going to be rolling out a ton of prizes next week, and so a lot of people, I'm grateful for Amazon. There's going to be a ton of Amazon stuff dropping on people's front steps, so if you participate, there's still a chance you can still get in the running for a ton of prizes. I think we got to hand out about 20 prizes next week, and so what I would say is that the other big opportunity is to have your voice heard, because there is enough momentum behind this survey that leaders and influencers in this industry, like yourself, Michelle, are going to pay attention. Mm-hmm. They're going to listen to this. They're going to say, okay, this is not like 3 or 4 people. This is hundreds of people who are ringing this bell and are saying, you know what, this has got to change, or otherwise I'm going to tell my friends, do not work in this industry. And so the reality is that if you're a frontline worker in this industry, participate in the survey, because it's a great chance for you to, in an anonymous, private environment, have your voice heard. Mm-hmm. And so we are hoping to get, another push. So my ask would be, if you're a manager, if you're an owner in this industry, have your staff complete the survey. It's going to take 10 minutes, right? It's anonymous, so they're not going to indicate, who you are or whatnot, but it gives us a chance to participate. And if you're a manager, participate as well. Text your staff, restorationsurvey.net. Text it to them. Say, hey, take 10 minutes and do this. They just pull it up on their phone, they click a button, and they're in the survey. They can knock it off. Average person is taking right now 10 minutes to complete it. And then what I would encourage your staff to do is, your listeners to do, is to go to whyworkersquit.com and sign up for kind of some early release of some of the research. So that's whyworkersquit.com. And but the first thing you want to do is you want to pull out your phone, type in restorationsurvey.net, and send it to your workers and say, hey, this is an industry engagement. Take 10 minutes and do this today.
Perfect. Okay. And you just kind of teased kind of my last question here, but beyond the article that's going to be in CNR in the next issue, which will be at a ton of trade shows as well. So people, if you hopefully already have a subscription and we'll get it, but you can also grab one at trade shows that are coming up, and they will be at some of the trade shows before they even hit mailboxes. But anyway, what is the end result for this survey? Like, there's going to be the article, but then what's the data for later? How do people access it? How will it be utilized in the industry moving forward?
Yeah, no, great question. So where you're going to get, I would say, the densest information is going to be in a report that we'll publish. The CNR article is going to really have what I would call the choicest cuts of beat from that article. So if you haven't signed up for CNR magazine, I would get that subscription. It's the most streamlined way of getting the data. Yep. And then we're going to be putting out a really robust report in the form of a book. And that you can begin to join the wait list for that at whyworkersquit.com. Now we have a lot of partners, and so what I would say is you're not going to be able to escape it. You're going to see this data because we have so many really high quality partners who are influencers in this industry, and they're going to be using the data to really hit home some of the important points and some of the important services that they deliver. And so, like it or not, this data is going to be in the industry. Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I'm looking forward to doing a final wrap, longer version podcast with you when all of the data is done and the article is out. And I'm really looking forward to this and sharing it with the industry. So thank you for all of your work, your team's work. I know you have a big team behind this as well. And so thank you for everything that you guys have done. And I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.